the operating budget. This
Yeah.
was, a big accomplishment for the legislature. I know, housing, economic development, the flat income tax. Just kind of talk me through what stood out to you most in this.
Well, so our fundamental part of the budget is to estimate the revenues that the state will have and then decide what the spending priorities are with the revenue that we have. And that's kind of an easy way of saying that, but those numbers change all the time. There's a steady, one of the interesting things is the absolute steady growth in income tax revenue to the state over the years in the last couple of decades, and compare that to the state's steady reduction of the income tax rate, going from over 9% in several brackets to one bracket in 2.75%. So when we've done that, and I've been part of several votes, people say, well, that's revenue we won't have to spend on whatever it is someone wants to spend it on. Well, in fact, what happens when you have a lower flat rate is, instead of paying money to the government, which doesn't use money efficiently, almost by design, people have extra money. They spend that. It creates more revenue in sales tax. The person who's providing the service or good, they have more income tax and they pay revenue. So that's why low flat income tax rates, in fact, produce more revenue to the government. And so it's I suppose, if you're trying to make an argument against it, you vote against it, and that's the best argument you can make. But that's, in fact, false. It's a false narrative. So the fact that now we have a flat revenue or have a flat rate means that we will, again, you can look at every historical example, and you can just use Ohio and see that increase in income tax revenue. So I thought that was a big deal. We only had a 1.9% increase in spending. That's the lowest in many, many years, many general assemblies, and certainly lower than inflation. So I thought that was significant. There was a lot of great policy. Some things that, we thought maybe should be obvious, and a number of other important pieces of policy that were in there. Sometimes we're scolded for dealing with social issues. Well, the General Assembly deals with all issues that are properly before it, that are constitutionally before it. And so whether we do that in a separate bill or budget bill, everybody has a chance to weigh in and vote and things like that. The interesting thing with the Brook Park development or the Cleveland Brown Stadium, this will be the largest economic development project in the history of the state. One may make the argument, well, if you used the $600 million of unclaimed funds money for something else, it would be better. Well, that's true for every economic development project that many local governments and chambers of commerce do. And, for what we did at the Enderall plant, Intel, the engine plant, Fairfield County, the hundreds of other facilities we currently do. So this would be the largest in the history of the state, and it's not using ordinary taxpayer money. The other part is that they don't have access to the funds unless the spending model demonstrates that the state will recover the funds directly from increased tax revenue from the project. I will tell you, we don't do that with other economic development projects. If your local development committee says we're going to give a $10 million loan so that they'll locate their facility there, there's no guarantee that they're going to be paying that back, and in fact, often they don't. That the local economy will recover that. Well, that will happen with this facility, or they don't get the money. So, much ado about nothing, I think, in the sense of whether the state is going to be made whole. But, just a lot of other great policy. Of course, it's a balanced budget, which we're required to do constitutionally. The state is the federal government, unfortunately, is not required to do that. And unfortunately, they're actually not even passing budgets anymore. So a serious problem there. But yeah, I think Brian Stewart and our budget team, David Reedy, our policy director, Marcus Benjamin, really a bunch of smart people working on this. Megan Sorensen, I should add. I could keep adding all the staff, but it's really a great team effort.
Yeah, some brilliant folks that we have for sure. I want to talk about, school funding and not just public, but also, private schools as well. It was a record or historic $700 million more, which, is an all-time high. We always hear about public schools and, they're at a deficit and why they need more money. You recently had a pretty neat experience at the other side of that coin.
Yeah, so I had visited a school called St. Thomas Aquinas. Now, this school is on East Broadway Street in the east side of Cleveland, and if you've been there before, it's a challenged neighborhood. I guess is maybe the best, kindest way to put it. About 5 years ago, the Catholic Diocese in Cleveland, because of low enrollment and costs, was going to close this school and 3 other schools that are in similar neighborhoods in Cleveland. And an entity called Partnership Schools, which has kept several schools open in Harlem and the Bronx and other parts of New York, asked the diocese to run these schools, and they are. And St. Thomas Aquinas I'm familiar with because the principal is a woman named Rachel Dengler, formerly known as Rachel O'Connor, who graduated with my daughter from Lima Central Catholic and was also the shooting guard on my 5th grade CYO basketball team. And she is a confident, in-charge person who's running this school. Now, the school itself, again, in a tough neighborhood, is 100% African American. There are 0 Catholics in the school, and it operates out of a 126-year-old building.
Wow.
So it is possible to operate out of a building that is not brand new. And I was there, visited the school, went in the classrooms while they were, and I, this is remarkable in and of itself. I've probably visited 100 schools in the time that I've been in city council and the House and the Senate. This is the first time that I went into classrooms that they did not ask me to speak to the students. And the answer was, we're not going to interrupt learning for anybody, no offense. And so they're used to having people. And one of the students came to the back, explained, well, we're reading Of Mice and Men. This is the 8th grade class, and we're breaking it down into plot, subplot, who the characters are. And then that student went over and sat down. So, and then I was leaving about the time the school was letting out. And there's this whole group of, I assume, relatives, parents. It looked like there were a lot of grandparents and maybe great-grandparents. And they were walking from this neighborhood. So this school has, in effect, become the public school for this neighborhood where these people live. I think East Cleveland, I'm not sure, but we spend the most per child in that school district than any place else out in the state. This is probably, my guess is we're spending about a third through the Cleveland Scholarship Program, which has been around for 30 years. And I think when I see apparently angry columnists, a guy like Tom Suddes, attacking this program, attacking a program that allows the poorest people in the city of Cleveland to have a school where they want their kids to go to. And I'm pretty sure that Rachel O'Connor Dengler is not making the same amount of money as a public school principal. To attack that program, it's just beyond me why someone would do that. But I think we need to do more of it, and I think we need to draw attention to these success stories.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that. I mean, incredible, and just it paints the whole story, right? As public schools in Columbus, right? Or you bring up other areas of the state. Or in private schools, they're not the same all across.
Yeah, and the answer, I think, ultimately is, Ohio is a very diverse state, maybe one of the most diverse states in the country, and there are the government typically, and certainly I think in K-12 education, is simply not nimble enough to deal with all of these questions. The people who are nimble are the people who are dealing with it in their household, in their neighborhood, with their children. And most people who decide to take, in this case, a Cleveland scholarship, are not doing it because, well, I think he'll get into a better college. It's this school is safe. This is with relatives of mine. This is my neighborhood. In fact, I'm told maybe a third of the school, the reason those students are there is this school remained open during the pandemic. And many parents were just driving by, seeing kids out on the playground, and their kids were at home. And, they didn't have access to the internet and didn't have computers and all. So their kids were doing nothing. And they said, can my kid go here? And they said, sure, bring him in. So their enrollment went up, about 30% right away because of the pandemic. And, of course, those kids have stayed there.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. On top of that, I want to ask just generally, what are you most proud of this first year back in the House and leading this?
Well, we've talked about several of the things, the ongoing problems that we've addressed, the energy issue, our higher education bill. We resolved the marijuana hemp issue. We got redistricting done, frankly, without a lot of fanfare, and that's probably the biggest accomplishment. And we've got this budget done with a lot of great stuff. So I think it's more of a collective thing that I'm most proud of, that those bills were getting passed by a substantial majority of the Republican caucus. Frankly, I'm fascinated with the real estate tax bills that those were also received some pretty strong support from the Democratic Party. And what that means to me is that the people who worked on this, when you have a 65 to 34 majority, you really don't have to work with the other side. But they did anyway, and because they knew that this issue dealt with everybody in every district. So I think probably the thing I'm most proud of is the size of the mountain that we have climbed legislatively.
Yes, I was asked also, this is a little bit of fun, do you have a New Year's resolution?
Oh, wow. I do not have a New Year's resolution. I don't know if I can think of right now, but I'll probably try to understand my grandchildren.
Yeah.
How about that?
I would ask you to tell the story again that you told in Dayton.
But yeah, they're interesting cats. I have 11 grandchildren, and there's 2 8-year-old girls. These are cousins, of course, and a 5-year-old girl. And then 7 of the next 8 are boys. So I have 7 grandsons between the age of 1 and 5. And young 3-year-old boys don't listen very well. And so sometimes I have to act like I got to lay down the law. But no, they come rushing to me whenever I come over. So, but I'm going to be a better husband, better grandfather, better father, better lawyer, better legislator. All of those things. They'll make it very general. How about that?
Yeah, the 2026 version, the new and improved.
It's not too new, but hopefully improved. So.
Well, Speaker Huffman, thank you so much. Quickly, our social media, you can visit us at Ohio House GOP Caucus on Facebook, Ohio House _GOP on Instagram, and OHR GOP Caucus on Twitter. You can subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Speaker Matt Huffman, thank you so much.
Thank you, Olivia.